Welcome. In this particular video, we'll be finding trigonometric ratios of any angles utilizing radians. Example 1. Find the value of the indicated function for the specified angle. In this case, what we're looking for is for sine of theta, where theta happens to be 8 pi over 3. So let's write down our information. So we're looking for sine of 8 pi over 3. Now, let's recall two facts from the unit circle. On the unit circle, we have that x is equal to cosine of theta and that y is equal to sine of theta. In this case, we're looking for the y coordinates. However, notice that 8 pi over 3 is not on the unit circle. So what we can do is we can look for a coterminal angle. In this case, what we're going to do is say, well, this is just sine of 8 pi over 3 minus 2 pi. However, we're going to look for the common denominator. In this case, it happens to be 3. So this is the same as sine of 8 pi over 3 minus 2 pi times 3 over 3. And this happens to be equal to sine of 8 pi over 3 minus 2 times 3 is 6 pi over 3. So this is actually equal to sine of 2 pi over 3. Now let's look for the angle whose radian measures 2 pi over 3. So if we were to come around, you notice we have 2 pi over 3 here. And since we're dealing with sine, we're looking for the y coordinate. So the y coordinate happens to be square root of 3 over 2. So you can say that this is square root of 3 over 2. Therefore, by the transitive property of equality, we can say that sine of 8 pi over 3 is equal to square root of 3 over 2. Let's see a few more examples. Example 2. Find the value of the indicated function for the specified angle. In this case, we're looking for cosine of theta, where theta happens to be 19 pi over 6. So let's write down the information. So cosine of 19 pi over 6 is equal to, well, take a look at 19 pi over 6. 19 pi over 6 is not an angle in here. So we're looking for an angle that happens to be coterminal with this one. So we can say, well, this is the same as cosine of 19 pi over 6 minus 2 pi. Now let's find the common denominator. In this case, the common denominator happens to be 6. So we have cosine of 19 pi over 6 minus 2 pi times 6 over 6. So that leaves us with this being equal to cosine of 19 pi over 6 minus 2 times 6, which is 12 pi over 6. We do the subtraction. This is the same as cosine of 7 pi over 6. Now, remembering the fact that on the unit circle, x is equal to cosine of theta and y is equal to sine of theta, we can find the angle whose radian measure is 7 pi over 6, which happens to be here. And since we're dealing with cosine, we're going to look for the x coordinate. And your x coordinate in here is negative square root of 3 over 2. So we can say, therefore, by the transitive property of equality, cosine of 19 pi over 6 is equal to negative square root of 3 over 2. Now let's do one more example. Example 3. Find the value of the indicated function for the specified angle. In this case, we're looking for tangent of theta, where theta happens to be negative 17 pi over 4. However, Notice that negative 17 pi over 4 is not an angle here. So what we're going to do is to write down the basics. So we're going to substitute in the value. So we have tangent of negative 17 pi over 4 is equal to, let's find an angle on the unit circle that happens to be coterminal with this one. So we can say that this is the same as tangent of, let's say, 2 pi minus 17 pi over 4. Let's look for the common denominator here, which happens to be 4. So we have, this is tangent of 4 times 2 pi over 4 minus 17 pi over 4. So this happens to be the same as tangent of 8 pi over 4 minus 17 pi over 4, which happens to be tangent of, in this case, 8 pi minus 17 pi is negative 9 pi over 4. Notice this is still a negative angle, so we're going to continue the process. So we're going to find another angle that happens to be coterminal here. So we are going to say that this is the same as tangent of 2 pi minus 9 pi over 4. Now looking for the same denominator, this is the same as tangent of 4 times 2 pi over 4 minus 9 pi over 4. So that gives you a tangent of 8 pi over 4 minus 9 pi over 4, which happens to be tangent of negative pi over 4. But negative pi over 4 is still not an angle on the unit circle. So let's add another 2 pi there. So this is the same as tangent of 2 pi minus pi over 4. Again, you're looking at the common denominator. This becomes tangent of 4 times 2 pi over 4 minus pi over 4. So this is now the same as tangent of 8 pi over 4 minus pi over 4. And this happens to be tangent of 7 pi over 4. Now, tangent of 7 pi over 4 is the same as sine of 7 pi over 4 divided by cosine of 7 pi over 4. Now, sine happens to be your y value, and cosine happens to be your x value. So going to your unit circle, we can find 7 pi over 4 here. Your x value is root 2 over 2, and your y value is negative root 2 over 2. So this is just negative square root of 2 over 2 divided by root 2 over 2. Now, so you can convince yourself of an equivalent statement here. We can rewrite this one as negative square root of 2 over 2 divided by square root of 2 over 2. Now, you can actually rewrite this one as a product. So this is just the square root of 2 over 2, of course the opposite of that, times the reciprocal of this second one. So this is 2 over the square root of 2. Notice the square roots of 2's cancel, and the 2's also cancel, leaving you with negative 1. Therefore, we can conclude that tangent, in this case of negative 17 pi over 4, is equal to negative 1. This is all possible by the transitive property of equality. Now, with that said, we can conclude this particular video. So we thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.